I'm going to talk about abusing power stations today, and the first thing I want to say is that these guys, these things, these power stations, they are not generators. They are not power generators. Anytime you hear them called a generator, it's a bad name. It's not true. They're not generators. These do not generate power. The first thing I want to tell you is that when I do a review on a power station, I'm not going to do I'm not going to be the guy that you go to that pulls out the O-scope and tells you how pure the pure sine wave inverter is. Sorry, but I'm the guy that's going to put my table saw up on the deck and plug it into the power station and then run it. And not just for testing purposes. In fact, my last trip up to the cabin, I needed to do a bunch of carpentry to get my back door installed in my rear room. It's a super insulated room behind the cabin. I have a homemade door I built it myself years ago, and I've been picking it up and taking it out of the hole that it's in because the room is subgrade, and then having to pick it up and put it back down. And if you're a member or you follow me on Facebook, then you know my back is pretty bad. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know I've got a bad back. In fact, my back is really bad right now, and I'm not able to hardly even walk. So picking that door up, that's a problem, folks. So I needed to install that door so that it just opens and closes like a regular door should. And don't ask me why it's taken me 11 years or whatever it is to get that door installed. But in order to do that, I had to rip down some 1x stock on my table saw. I had to cut them to length and put some 45s on them with my miter saw. I needed to use my skill saw to do some cuts and also trim the door itself. And I also needed to use my compressor for my brad nailer. Well, guess what? I ran all of those off of this power station right here for about 3 hours, between 3 and 4 hours, and pretty good usage. Now, I would say you don't use those things nonstop all day long, because if you are, a power station is not for you. You should be in a shop like this doing that then, right? Where you've got good, strong, either big time solar power or utility power. But a power station can function similar to a generator, say if you're out building a cabin, and it can absolutely do that. I could have built the cabin with something like this right here. In fact, I'm quite certain that this particular power supply would have done it, and I probably would have used less fuel and put less wear and tear on my generator had I had this, not to mention less noise. Now, I had a 3,500 watt Champion gas-powered Harbor Freight generator, and it worked really well. I think I paid $300 for it, and believe it or not, I think I sold it a dozen years later for $300. It was still working good, too. But, you know, that meant running that generator, it was loud, and it was really heavy, heavier than this. This weighs 48.5 pounds. That generator probably weighed closer to 100 pounds. And typically when I fired it up to run something, I just left it running. Otherwise, you have to constantly start it and constantly stop it, and that's hard on them. You know, you're going to break your pull cord. You're just going to wear them out that way. So you just fire them up and let them run all day, using a lot of gas while you're at it. What if you had one of these and you use this all day instead, and then in the evening when you're having dinner and getting ready to put things away, you fired up your generator and spend an hour and a half charging this up? I think it would have been better, and I could have done it with this unit. And I'm going to talk about this unit, and I want to talk about how I test power stations for you to give you my honest opinion. And I'm going to tell you right now, this Aferiy 2400 watt power station, it'll do it in spades. I was absolutely impressed with this, and this is my 5th power station that I've either bought or been given. And yes, Aferiy did send this to me. I didn't have to pay for it, so thank you, Aferiy, for that, and for letting me absolutely abuse this thing and try to let the smoke out. But it never let the smoke out. It got dirty, but it didn't let the smoke out. All right, so what did I do? Well, first of all, let's talk about this unit. I've already unboxed it, and it's a heavy unit. It weighs 48.5 pounds. It has a 2,048 watt-hour LifePo 4 battery, and this unit has a 5-year warranty on it. Now, LifePo 4 batteries, if you're not familiar with them, they are much better than the old lithium-ion style batteries that were more unstable. They didn't last nearly as long. These guys right here, you could get 3,500 plus cycles at 100% depth of discharge. That means completely drain it down 3,500 plus times. But if you only drain it down 40%, this thing will last you the rest of your life. That's typically how these work. Now, the electronics, I don't know. Are they as good as my Pioneer receiver I bought in 1997 and I'm still using today? Well, I guess I won't know for another 30 years. But this guy here, I have no doubt that it will last at least 10 to 20 years, and by then technology will have improved considerably. But today, this guy, this is something you should look at. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, there are some great power station manufacturers out there, and everybody knows them. Big names, big bucks, but big names. They've got great reputations. If you're not looking at this, then I think you're making a mistake, especially because this is $8.99 right now on sale, or maybe even $8.59. There's a link down below. When you see this, that code may be still available to get these for under $900. Normally, they run about, I think, $1,500. But I'm telling you right now, and I'm not doing this because they gave it to me. I'm not telling you that. I don't have any skin in this game. I don't have an affiliate program. I don't get any extra money if you go buy one of these. But I'm telling you right now, I abused the crap out of this power station this weekend, and it took it in spades, and I was thoroughly impressed. I've been abusing power stations for a few years now, and I've drained them down. I've even let some smoke out of some of them. And I'm telling you, this one here, I think this is absolutely, for the money, the best power station I've had yet. And that's just my honest opinion, okay? So, let's take a look at this guy. Let's have a look. Let's see what, let's see what we think about it here. All right, first of all, they do come with this cool little cover, and I like these. I mean, I know they're simple. It's just a little dust cover, but it's kind of nice to keep the dust and the dirt off of it. What we got here, we got on top of this thing, you've got a little, well, I guess you could call it a cord storage box or something like that. It's got some sawdust in it. I will tell you, you can't put the big power cord in there, at least I haven't been able to, but they give you this little carrying case for the power cord. And I do want to mention this power cord. Have a look at this guy. This thing is heavy, heavy duty power cord. Why? Because this Aferiy 2400 can take 1100 watts at 120 volts off your wall socket. 1100 watts. Don't try to do that on some little thin power cord because you'll burn it up. You need that big, thick, heavy material. It doesn't get hot when I plug it in, and this will draw 1100 watts off of that. Now, speaking of charging, you can also put up to 500 watts of solar through this thing. Now, can you do them at the same time? Yeah, you can. And Aferiy says from dead zero, you can charge this up in an hour and a half if you plug it into a 120 volt connection that can give you 1100 watts, and then plug in 500 watts of solar panels into it. You can charge it up in an hour and a half. Well, that makes sense. It's 2,048 watt hours. So 1100 watts in 2 hours is 2,200 watt hours. Well, you don't need 2 hours at 1100 watts, right? So you add that solar panel in there. If you've got good sun, it's straight into the sun. Hour and a half, perhaps less, depending on how much you've charged it or discharged it. So I'm super impressed with that. This is the Aferiy model P210, battery capacity 2,048 watt hours. That's 40 amp hours at 51.2 volts. It's a 48 volt battery. That is more efficient than using a 24 or 12 volt battery, all right? We've got 1100 watt max charge, 100 volts to 120 volts, 50 or 60 hertz. It's got an XT90 input. That input gives you 11.5 to 50 volts at 500 watts max. So that's for your solar power input. Folks, that is awesome. Every one of these I've tested so far did not have that kind of range. 11.5 to 50 volts. Well, guess what, folks? I've got a 24 volt battery that I could hook up to an XT90 cable and more than double the capacity on this power supply with that battery. Now we're talking. You'd have over 4,500 watt hours. That's half the power damn near that I have at my cabin. That's a lot. I could run my cabin off of that, actually, because I've got excessive power at the cabin intentionally. So that's amazing. You've got USB A and C, 18 watts max on A, and 20 and 100 watt max on the C, depending on which port you're in, plus an XT60 output. 12 volts, 25 amps, a DC 12 volt output, a car port output, and 1 watt LED, as well as your AC output of 100 to 120 volts, 50 to 60 hertz, and an off-grid mode rated at 2400 watts, UPS mode rated 1100 watts, peak 2200. So your off-grid mode, that's your sine wave inverter, can actually peak at 4,000 watts. Now, will it really? My table saw can draw over 1,500 watts on startup, and I'm sure actually it probably spikes more than that. I just didn't see it. And it can maintain over 1,000 watts draw while I'm running it, and I ran it several times off of this that day. My miter saw, I think I even saw it draw 1,800 watts at one point. My compressor runs a sustained 850 to 1,100 watt, and I mean sustained because it takes it 10 or 15 minutes to fill up the tank. So that's impressive, folks. I ran a 40-year-old skill saw to trim down the door I was installing off of this. Again, extended periods running 1,000 watts or whatever. So it will do it in spades. This will run your refrigerator. It'll run a microwave. It'll run your freezer. So if you have an outage, power outage at home in the big city or whatever, you could plug your freezer into this here. It would run it for a while. All right, here we go. Excuse me, groaning and moaning. My back is definitely struggling. All right, so on the front, you've got your power. You'll notice that it's at 85%. That's because Darcy was running a slow cooker on this at a party we were at for a few hours, one of those big ones. It did use 15%. It was drawing quite a lot of power, but it was running for a few hours. On the front, you've got a button for your DC power, so you just push that button. That turns your DC power on. Let's turn it off. And when you do that, I'll turn it on again. When you do that, it's going to pop up with symbols on the front of this guy that tell you what's turned on, okay? Turn it off. Same thing on the side. There's one on the side for your 120 volts, and then you see a little symbol pops up. We'll turn that off. There we go. And then you've got, on the front here, you've got your 12-volt carport style plug. You've also got, this one is an XT60 type 12-volt plug, okay? And then you've got a couple of the DIN style 12-volt plugs. You've also got your USBs on the front with a separate power switch. And that one has, and it labels these QC 3.0 and then PD 20 watt, 20 watt, 20 watt, and 100 watt. So these are your USB-Cs. These are your USB-As. Turn that off. And that's all you got in the front, other than you do have the light. And usually you just hold this or just push it. There you go. And the light will come off. So it does have a light on there. All right, let's turn this around. And again, it's 48.5 pounds, folks. And I've got a buggered back today, so we're not going to pick it up. But on the side, if you pop this open, you'll have your 120 volt and your XT90, which is 11 to 50 volt connections that you can charge this up with. And it also has a little breaker on the side here. Now, it's got some nice carry handles, and believe me, this thing can use a two-hand carry, folks. It's heavy. All right, and then on the side, if you pop up the side here, you've got 620 volt or 110 volt connections down here on the side. It is an awesome unit, folks. All in all, I will tell you that the first thing you got to know is that if you get into these bigger power supplies, 2,000 watts and up, they're going to be heavy. You're picking up a battery. Batteries are heavy. A 48-volt battery, which is 51.2 volts, typically, LiFePO4s, it's going to weigh, 40 pounds plus, right? That's a heavy battery. So you're putting that battery in here, and then all the other electronics in the case and everything else around it, it weighs 48.5 pounds. So you've got to bear that in mind, but it does have good solid carrying handles right here. So two-man carry or two-person carry or whatever, you'll be fine. If you're a strapping young lad and you don't have a bad back like me, you can just pick it up yourself and carry it. In fact, a friend of mine, another Marine, who's probably in worse shape than I am, picked it up and carried it in here for me because my back's out. But that's one thing to bear in mind. But if you were going to build a cabin in the woods, and you were thinking, I could get a generator and use that, you could, and it might not cost you as much. But one of these, at right now under $900, regular price I think is around $1,400-$1,500, you wouldn't be running a whole lot of gas, especially if you get a set of solar panels for it. It works great, and even if you're only doing it on weekends, this probably would last the weekend for all the work that I was doing out at the cabin. I only drained it down to about 78%, maybe 76, something like that, in the 4 hours that I was out there working. So yeah, in another 4 hours, if I'd have put a full 8-hour day in, I might have drained it to 50%. But the next day, if I stayed 2 days out there, I'd still have 50% left to drain it if I needed to. So if I had a set of solar panels, I'm in like Flynn. If I had a generator, I run the generator for an hour at 50% and charge it right back up again. 1 hour versus running my generator for 8 or 10 hours. I think it's worth it. I really do. And if you're into overlanding, camping, that kind of stuff, this might be a bit heavy. But if you're running a big refrigerator like we do, our 75-liter Smittybilt, this thing would run that for a long time. I would never have to worry. I could easily put this in the back of my Jeep, plug in that refrigerator, and forget about it for probably a week, and it'd be just perfectly fine. I love that. I really do. So, first of all, kudos to Aferiy. This thing's amazing. I abused the heck out of it, covered it in sawdust, and man, I thought I was going to let the smoke out, and it just kept on going. It didn't even care. So there you have it, folks. The Aferiy P210 2400 watt power station. It's awesome. I'm really, really impressed with it. This thing, it makes me feel good. I like the dang thing. All right, folks. Y'all have a great day. I appreciate it. The old Jarhead out.